All right, so it is April, and we're continuing on our Read Around the World challenge. And so this month we read The Seven Sisters by Lucinda Riley, and we checked off Brazil for our country this month. Um, so we'll start our discussion. So we had the story like follows two women, kind of. We had Maya, and then we had Isabella, and like mostly this whole book was like Isabella's story. Um, so I was curious what people's overall thoughts of Isabella were. She goes through like quite a journey.
I
Yeah.
felt kind of bad
I
for her. Go
I
ahead.
think I enjoyed Isabella's story more than Maya's story, and I would have read a whole book just about her story.
Yeah,
I did get annoyed with her mainly because I just couldn't
annoyed with
understand why she
Isabella.
couldn't. Yeah, just mainly because I was like, why can't you just stay in Paris? Like, what happens? What really happens if you stay in Paris? But I also am not in her position or understand that lifestyle to understand what the consequences are of staying.
Right. Well, even like she was kind of yanking Laurent back and forth. Like first she was in Paris and she met him and they fell in love. And then he's like, "You should stay with me." And she's like, "I'll think about it." And then last minute she decides not to. And
Mm-hmm.
then when he finds her in Brazil, she kind of does the same thing. And it's worse this time because now she's pregnant with his child and has told him that she's pregnant with his child. And then she's like, "Actually, I'm just going to stay here and raise your child with my husband. And good luck in France in your life." Like, but she doesn't even like have the courage to tell him face to face. She sends her like maid to go and do it. So that was probably the
Well,
most annoying part of
well,
Isabella.
I think when she was in Paris, I also don't understand what the consequences would have been, but I would assume like his her dad wanted her to marry Gustavo like for the reputation, really, like the old family money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I imagine if she had just like bailed on that, it would have completely like ruined
Her
his
parents, really,
reputation.
yeah.
Yeah. And he had already like paid the family like a large dowry and was like renovating their houses. Like everything in Rio was moving forward as if they were already married, like contractually, I think. And so I think for her to just decide to break that, I think would have had really big consequences for her family if she had stayed there. And then I don't think that she was a coward because she wrote the letter because she knew that like he had already Gustavo had already come by and like checked up on her. And I so she had to send her maid because there was no other option. Like she couldn't get away herself to go
That's
talk
true,
to
I
him.
guess.
So I don't think it was a matter of her like not being able to say it to his face. She just didn't want to leave him with nothing. So
But even just the fact that she like the day before was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm pregnant and it's your baby and I don't know what I'm going to
yeah,
do." And then he's leaving the next day and then she's like,
but she
"Bye."
didn't know that he was leaving. She
Yeah,
went to his
she
house.
knew. She knew he was leaving when he
Yeah,
No,
told
she
she
her.
was
went.
like,
She went to his house to tell him, and then he said, "I have to leave because I don't have any more work, and I'm leaving in the next couple of days." And she was like, "Oh well, just so you know, I'm pregnant." So she didn't go there knowing that he was
I
leaving.
thought she wrote it in the letter, and that's how Gustavo found out.
No, she was at his house.
I think she
Mm.
had like professed her love to Laurent in the letters, but there was no like actual talk about them having a baby or having any sort of like relations that way. So he was like, "This sounds like it was probably a love affair, but there's not any actual evidence that it was like a physical love affair."
So it says that she went to him, and then he like carries her off to bed, and then they're laying there and they're talking about the time that she had been away with her mom. And she says, like, what have you been doing? How have you been keeping yourself busy? And she's like, he says, sadly, I haven't gotten any more commissions. And with everything going on in New York, he's afraid that he's not going to be able to go back to France if he doesn't go now. And he asks, he says that they've booked him a cabin that leaves on Friday. He has to take it. Belle listens to Laurent, finally realizing just how deep the crisis in America has gone. And she says, you're sailing in 3 days. And he was like, yes, please come with me. She's like, you have waited for me long enough, and there's something I have to tell you. And then it like jumps to a different scene, and then it comes back, and he says, are you sure the baby is mine? So she finds out that he's leaving in 3 days in the time that she had gone to tell him that the baby was, that she was pregnant.
But I felt bad for Isabella either way, because Gustavo, like, just her description of him, and then I was listening to the audiobook, so even the narrator was like making him
His voice.
sound. Yeah.
Weird voice.
His-
The
So-
mom and Gustavo had the same voice, and I thought that was kind of funny.
That was
Yeah.
funny.
Their wedding night, though, I was like cringing the whole time.
Yeah. No, literally every single time that she's like, he basically like raped her for the
Months.
first months of their marriage, like just forced
Yeah.
himself on her.
He even said, like, after she left when her mom was dying and she came back, he was like, there will be no more forced bedtime activities.
Yeah. He knew.
It just like is disgusting. She didn't, I mean, and then he just turned into like this drunk man, and he never stood up to his mother until the end. And then after, like when they were talking about, when Yara was talking about her, what's the grandma's name? Anyways, so when Yara was talking to Maya about her great grandfather, which technically she's not even related to him, right?
To who?
To Gustavo.
Yeah.
Like, she's not actually like blood related to this man.
No.
But I guess the grandma never knew that Laurent was her real dad. But when
I
Yara
think
was
the grandma's name is Carla, by the way.
Oh, okay. But when Yara was talking about Gustavo, she was like, he was a weak man. Like, he wasn't a bad man. He was just a weak man. And he, like, turned back to alcohol after Isabella died and, like, basically was not a good father to Carla. Is that what you said?
I think that's Carla.
So, I don't know. Gustavo is not my favorite. I also had another thought in regards to like the baby is like before they started their like physical love affair when he got to Brazil, like he was telling her that there are ways that artists know of to prevent pregnancy and all of this stuff. And apparently he didn't do any of those things.
Or didn't do him well.
Or didn't do them well, but basically talked her into doing this because he's like, I know how to not get you pregnant. And then
Well, he told her it wasn't foolproof.
I guess so. But then it made me think of when Maya was talking about Zed, is that his name? And how when she was talking to, what's his name? Florinio or whatever. What's his name? This guy, does he have a nickname? Can't we just call him something else?
No.
Fabio.
What's his name?
Floriano.
Okay, that guy.
Wait, I just saw
The author.
The author, the historian author guy. He was like, so, because this said guy had gotten her pregnant in college and she gave the baby up for adoption, and she's telling this guy that, like, her story, And he's like, so basically he talked you into like having sex with the idea that like basically that she wasn't going to get pregnant or whatever. I'm like, that is exactly what happened to her great grandmother. Oh, how the tables turn. So, anyways.
Oh, how the turntables have turned.
Except for Laurent actually loved her, and Zed was just there to have a good time.
That's true. Another thought I had about Laurent was when he was like having his whole introspection thing, like before the Cristo guy, whoever that guy. I'm really bad with names. I'm sorry. His boss, Laurent's boss. Like before he sent him off to Brazil, like he was having this whole introspection moment, and he's like being really sad, and that Isabella had left, and he was like, I was kind of just playing with her emotions and trying to, and then now all of a sudden she's gone, and I realized that I actually loved her, and I'm like, what if she had stayed? She would have lost everything, and he would have just been this guy who was playing with her. Like,
true.
Anyways, the guys in this book, man, they just leave something to be desired.
So we talked a little bit about Gustavo, but did your opinions of him like ever change?
No.
You didn't like him the whole time?
The whole time.
I wouldn't say the first time, like when he first showed up, it wasn't that I didn't like him. I was just like, he's there. But then they actually got married, and I was like, you're icky.
Yeah, the very beginning of their marriage was like really rough. I do like appreciate the fact that he had suspicions that his wife was unfaithful and that the baby like wouldn't actually be his. But then like after she died, because she died very soon after,
like
only a
18
few
months.
years.
I think yeah.
And he still like raised he still kept, I don't know that he necessarily raised him or her. I'm sure like the maids had a lot to do with that.
Well, didn't she say that basically Antonio raised her? Like,
Yeah,
like
she basically lived at the cottage with the maid and her husband and the daughter.
Yeah. So
was Antonio Gustavo's dad?
Antonio is Isabella's dad.
Oh, okay.
I think. Gustavo's dad was like Mauricio or something like that.
So, but I do appreciate that he didn't just kind of like
put her on the streets.
Yeah,
I mean, because he wasn't a good father to her. He just didn't put her on the streets.
I guess in my head, because the maid talked about how like they would be eating dinner, and she felt like sometimes he would be staring at her almost like he was trying to decide if he was the father or not.
I don't know, but even like she was interested in art, and he refused to allow her to do that because he knew that he was not her child.
But then at the end of the book, which is something else I want to talk about, I feel like there's a lot of things at the end of the book, because then it alludes to like possibly Luisa, Gustavo's mom, having Asperger's. And
she said that it's hereditary, but it skips a generation or something.
Yeah, like she was saying somebody else in the line of girls also had Asperger's, and they thought that she possibly got it from Luisa.
But at that point, she didn't even know. Like, she didn't know that Gustavo was not her dad.
Carla never knew.
I think her name's Beatrice.
Beatrice is
then who's Carla?
Carla is Isabella's mom.
Oh no, I thought it was Christine.
No, there's no Christine. I don't know where you're getting a Christine from.
No, Beatrice is the old lady
in present time, but she is the love affair child.
Christina, hold on. There is a Christina. I think Christina is Beatrice's daughter.
I'm telling you.
Oh,
Please.
yes.
Right.
Yeah, so the family tree goes Isabella, Beatrice, Christine, Maya.
Maya.
So, and they were saying
Just-
that Christine appeared to have Asperger's, I think. She was a very difficult child. And so then, yeah, Beatrice was then implying that she would have inherited that from Louisa. But I guess you're right. Louisa didn't know that she wasn't actually related to them.
Yeah. Yeah, because even like Beatrice had like spent years in
Time
France.
with
Like,
Laurent.
yeah. Yeah. So,
Not
and
knowing.
had no idea.
Which that would have broken my heart if I was Maya sitting there listening to this old woman like tell me about this time in Paris and stuff and just like realizing in real time like you don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Like
you
you're about to
literally don't know.
die. You're literally on your deathbed and you don't know that this man that you spent time with is your dad.
Yeah, and like that's not the time to like tell
No,
be
right?
like be like, "Oh, well, I actually just read all these letters from your mom and
Yeah. Well, and you know Laurent knew who she was.
right, right, because I think she was even like, oh yeah, I told her, or she was like, I told him I was Isabella's daughter, and he like took me under his wing, and we spent all this time, and like,
And he was so generous with his time and all of this stuff.
yeah,
I'm like, no, girl, he wanted to spend time with you because you're his.
right, he can't believe that like the universe brought you guys together.
That was kind of
So
sweet, though, that she actually had time with him. But yeah, it would have made
yeah,
me really sad just to realize that she had no idea. She had no
yeah,
idea that she had a father who loved her and who wanted her instead of like the Gustavo that she got. Plus, his name's Gustavo, guys. Like, that just feels like a rotten person.
I don't know. I feel like it sounds like a very 1920s name. That no,
Yeah.
not that was wrong. 1800s is when like he would have been. Yeah,
It sounds like
I think
Gaston.
a Brazilian Gaston.
Yes.
Well,
Except
Isabella's
for he
name
looks more like
was
LeFou.
Belle. Isabella. They called her Belle.
It's true. It's true.
Maybe it's another Beauty and the Beast retelling.
Except for Gustavo is more like LeFou. Like he's not like this beefy
Yeah.
man's man.
You did that in the
Alpha
Fable app.
bro.
You were saying that you were hoping he wasn't like some Hans
No, he was
character.
totally Hans. I mean, maybe like 80% Hans. Like Hans of the Southern Isles. Like he wasn't trying to do like a hostile takeover, but he definitely was not the husband I don't think that Isabella thought he was going to be going
Right.
into the marriage.
And I think especially with like her conversation with her mom where her mom was like, you will learn to love him, and she was like, okay, maybe I can do that. And then like as they were married, she was like, I'm disgusted by him.
Yeah, well, and maybe if he had been kind and like continued to be the Gustavo that he was before, like maybe she could have learned to love him. But
Right.
he turned into like this drunkard who forced himself on her every single night. Like she didn't even know that sex could be good until like she had it with Laurent. Like he had no desire to make it a like a good experience for her. He just ravaged her every single night. So
Yeah.
he's
And
not my favorite.
I wonder like what turned him into that. Because you never really hear much about him.
I think it's because his parents, like he just felt like I don't know, because his parents were still living in the house. His dad still had like control of all the accounts. His mom was still running the house. Basically, they were like married teenagers, but not of teenager age, like living in their parents' house. They were Cheyenne and Van, guys.
Well, but like yeah, I don't know. Isabella's dad paid for like a whole renovation of the house. He put way too much money into that family, I feel like. So that was like another I didn't write this one down. It's another question that we had talked about was like Isabella's dad's like pursuit of wealth and like recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you like? Do you think that was just who he was, or like what was driving it? That was a question we read. Um, and I just think he put way too much money into this other family to gain that like
Like
title
favor.
and social rising.
Well, I think that he got that just from Isabella marrying Gustavo, but
Right. But then like
um, I think
he
the
put
giving them
so
money
much
to like
into it.
renovate their house, I think that that was almost like for Isabella so that she could live in a nice house, but
Right.
also also it's like he's the generous benefactor helping his in-laws like whatever finish their house. But yeah, I don't know, her dad, we talked about this, but her dad reminded me of the dad from The Women, Frankie's dad, where he was like he had all of like the war hero pictures on the wall, and but he wasn't actually a war hero even though he really wanted to be. And so um it was like this big family thing that you know, like you're a war hero. And um that was kind of how, that was the vibe that I felt from Isabella's dad, where he was just like, he had started poor and kind of come up from that. And that was just like his focus was just like compensating for the lack that he had started with. So, but I don't know. I do know that it like, because Isabella's mom, Carla, um, she was, when she had found out she was really sick and she was dying, um, she was like, you know, your father is married to the coffee fields and all of this stuff. Like, he's not going to miss me. Like, so even her mom had no idea, like, how important she was to him because of his pursuit of this social status that he was focused on. So,
Yeah, well, and her mom had to give up a lot for him too because she like he kept trying to move him closer and closer to Rio,
yeah,
and she like the only reason she actually moved to Rio from the fazenda or whatever it's called was if they like kept that house. She wasn't willing to like sell that house.
yeah. Something I thought was really weird at the beginning of the book, well, at the beginning of Isabella's story, was when they had just moved to Rio. Um, like she had come into the breakfast room and called her dad Papa, and he was like, "No, no, like that is not proper. Like you need to call me Pie now instead of Papa. Like only country bumpkins call their fathers Papa." I'm like, that's
I
really
don't remember
weird.
that.
It's really weird.
I
I'll find.
remember that.
Hmm.
So I was like, even like you're gonna make your daughter call you something different, even though she's been calling you Papa her whole life, because it just sounds better. Weird.
What were your thoughts of like the historical aspects of this story? And did you think they were interesting?
I think that like it definitely had an effect more. I feel like this book had an effect of the historical aspect more than um
The women.
no, not really the women, but like maybe the Briar Club, like other historical
Oh,
fiction
okay.
books. But I also feel like if he was just a sculptor, like a sculptor just sculpting a random thing, it could have also been the same story. Like so I don't know how important it was, but it was a big part. Is what I'm saying.
Did you find
Yeah.
it interesting, or could you have done without it? Because like I kind of liked, and I never like I didn't actually fact check any of it. But when he was talking about like how they built the sculpture and how like the inside of it, he was just gonna build it like a normal building, and
hmm
then he was just gonna have the sculptor, do the outside of it. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I
And
think my only thought about it was like people who do stuff like that for a living, especially people who did stuff like that in the 1800s, like they're geniuses. Like, especially considering the fact that it's still standing today. Like, the Cristo, the Statue of Liberty, like, just like these giant statues that they literally had to bring over from Europe in pieces, like, and they built them here without any of our modern technology, without like any of that. And I think Brazil gets earthquakes. Like, I don't think New York
That
gets
makes sense.
earthquakes, but I think Brazil gets earthquakes. And so the fact that it's still standing now,
Yeah.
like, it's just kind of, it's baffling to me. Like, these people were just like visionary, just geniuses to be able
Well,
to do
and like
something like that.
thinking about like how they had to dig into the mountain, obviously, to kind of like counter the height. They had to dig down, but then it's like they have giant heavy machinery. Like, how are they digging massive holes through the earth, through the
Yeah, or that
mountain?
thing is like tall. Like, they had to like get the head up there. Like, I think that at least in the late 1800s, I think there was some sort of mechanics happening, but still,
I'm pretty sure it was 1920 also.
Was it 1920?
Yeah.
I thought
No,
it was 18
1920 was
Right?
when Maya was living.
No, Maya was like
2007.
2007.
2007.
That's true.
Which
Okay.
I had something to say about that because her and her Filipino guy, whatever his name is, Floridian, her boyfriend, okay?
Uh-huh.
Her author boyfriend. Like, they're like sending emails and like letters. And I'm just thinking 2007.
They were emailing each other because they were like coworkers at first.
I guess.
But then I'm pretty sure they started calling each other.
Yeah. I don't know.
I
trying
sent
to think
emails
of
to friends in 2007, like just chatting.
I'm trying to
I
think of
didn't.
like phone technology. Well, you were like 7.
I remember like when I was in North Dakota, like emailing people back in Alaska and just being like, just like a letter, like, hey, this is my life. These are the things I'm doing. Like, can't wait to hear from you. Send.
I guess.
His name's Floriano.
Floriano, not Floridian or Filipino?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. Cell
So
phones,
the
2007.
statue itself is 26 feet high. Which,
Really? Only
That's
26
it?
feet?
It says.
But is it like on something?
I was going to say, I am in a theater that the opening is 20 feet. So only 6 feet higher? I build stuff like that all the time. I'm gonna be...
Hold on. It says the base. Wait, hold on. The base of the statue is in Rio de Janeiro. Is 26 meters high. The statue itself.
Meters.
No, 8 meters, 26 feet high. The statue itself stands 30 meters, which is 98 feet tall, and is located on
that makes more sense.
the mountain, which is 20. So is there like a base to the statue?
Okay, you like shrunk this statue for me real fast. I was like envisioning this giant Jesus Christ on a mountain, and you're like, it's 27 feet, and he literally went. I was like, no.
So I think he said, okay. So he sits on a base.
Okay.
So that base is 28 feet, and then he is another 98 feet.
That makes way more sense.
So what I had Googled was like, how far into the earth does it go? But it didn't tell me that.
Okay, I just looked up cell phones in 2007, okay? Like, And I remember these things in high school. So I know people had these BlackBerry phones like in high school in 2003. So I'm just thinking in 2007, they should have been texting.
But she like lived in this.
How old was she?
She lived
Also.
at like the base of this mountain because it was a high mountain. Like nobody could get over it. You had to come from the lake in the middle of nowhere, Switzerland.
So you're just thinking she didn't have a cell phone?
What need did she have? She had the computer. She had landlines. Like,
I guess.
Not everybody had a cell phone in 2007. Like,
But she had a cell phone at least in Rio because she also calls her sister at some point.
did she call her sister?
I thought she called Allie at some point.
No, she doesn't talk specifically about Allie until she says she like set off some emails, but she doesn't talk about Allie until she just shows up at the house.
Yeah, I think the only time she called anybody back in Switzerland was when she called from France, telling her mother, for all intents and purposes, like that they were coming to see her.
Well, and
and
all
she
of
was
her
bringing a
sisters
friend.
and her would have had a phone because they were trying to get a hold of Allie to tell her that their dad died.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. You know,
she
the
did have
email
cell phones at that point.
the email thing and the handwritten letters thing is really throwing me off.
And Zed, well, I guess he calls her house phone, but anyways.
So,
I think they were all still pretty prominent. Like, just looking back I wasn't even that old and I was emailing people, but also calling people. And
that's because you didn't have a cell phone.
Well, but I really wanted a cell phone so I could text people.
But that's not the same thing.
But, like, I'm saying that in 2007, people had cell phones and were texting people regularly. But I was also emailing people and getting emails back, so that was still, like, a thing. And we still had a landline, and people still... I remember the day I had, like, left North Dakota, somebody had called the house, so, like, because they were hoping to see me one more time. So people were still using landlines. Like, all of these things were still acceptable ways to communicate with friends.
Whatever, Jill.
Back in 2007, these were all acceptable ways to contact your friends.
Okay, well, I was in my 20s in 2007, and I can't tell you I was emailing my friends.
Wow.
I was definitely not emailing my friends. Maybe. I can't tell you with 100% certainty.
How old is Maya? Is she just used to emailing and phones are newer to her?
Maybe.
I don't remember how old she was.
I don't remember either.
Well, she had finished college, and she had a career as a translator. So, I mean, she was probably in her late 20s at the, like, earliest. I'm not sure it says.
I don't know.
Anyways,
if anybody who's listening has any idea about whether or not they should have been texting, you just let us know, because we're very curious about this.
Okay, when I started this book, the cover, I thought this was Maya, but now I think it's Isabella. But because I thought it was Maya, the entire time I was reading, I would forget that she was in 2007, and I would automatically put her in 1920. And then I would get confused when we would jump to Isabella, and I was like, who is Isabella? Is she her mother? Is she her grandmother? Is she her great-grandmother? So I was just getting timelines mixed up, and I was constantly confused about who was who and what was going on.
Okay, can we go back to the Cristo though? Like, look how big he is on this picture, and
Yeah,
you like
only 6 feet tall.
you like shrunk him to like half that size.
That looks like 28 feet to
me. Definitely.
I'm also pretty sure it has him on like a butte type of a hill rather than an actual mountain.
I don't know. I think the mountain looks like that. I think it
does?
Yeah.
That looks like he's on top of the butte.
No, it's not like a mountain range. So, like...
That's wild.
He's literally just like on the
He definitely looks
singular.
like 28 feet in that picture, but not in that picture. Maybe it just depends on the angle.
Okay, so I felt like at the end of the book there were several storylines that I did not get answers to. And now I'm like trying to remember what they were.
I am trying to think of what they could have been because I feel like it was pretty wrapped up in a bow. Except for Paul Salt. 100% he's still alive.
So,
100%
okay,
Allie picked up the phone and heard his voice. Okay?
I was thinking that too.
Wait, when did Allie call
At
him?
chapter 51, like she had picked up the
Oh,
house phone
Yeah, to
and
make
she
a
was like, I
call.
heard a familiar voice. And
Yeah,
then,
so it's like it's the very last page. So it was like, um,
so he's just hiding in his office? Is that why it was locked? He's just sitting in
no,
there?
she was in his office.
yeah, but
Okay.
he's like, I don't want any of my daughters to see, whatever, my burial. So just send me off to sea.
Right.
I'm like, that's suspicious.
What a dramatic man.
I know, for real.
So it
He like
said,
leaves all
oh,
these clues around the earth, like
Ugh,
yeah, so
what
it
an
just says
exhausting
that
man.
she was like sitting there working on her laptop and her laptop just randomly decided to like restart. So while she was waiting, she had picked up the receiver of the phone to make a call. Holding the receiver to my ear as I dialed the number, I realized someone else in the house was already on the line. The shock of hearing the familiar tones of the voice that had comforted me in childhood forced me to interrupt the conversation. Hello, I said, but the voice on the other end had become a monotonous bleeping, and I knew he had gone.
and we
And
know
that's
he's
it.
not calling from the grave because it's not that kind of book.
I
So
don't know.
that it might turn into all those TV shows start off real normal and then all of a sudden they're like supernatural. Maybe it's one of those.
I guess I was thinking that like, um, hold on.
Okay. So I was trying to figure out where the whole Seven Sisters thing came from, and then Laurent was talking to the little boy about the constellations, right? And I was like, okay, but that doesn't make sense because, like, Maya's dad would have never known Laurent. Like that connection didn't make sense to me at that point. And then I was like, so why did this guy now all of a sudden decide that this Seven Sisters thing was important? And I think that Maya's dad was the little boy that she saved. But then that would make him really old.
Yeah.
And he didn't sound super old. So maybe Maya's dad is like an ancestor or a descendant of the little boy. Or maybe Maya's dad is Laurent's son. What?
Totally
Three
possibility.
theories. He just came up with 3 theories.
Anyways, I think Maya's dad has some connection to, like, Pa Salt. Pa Salt has some connection to Laurent in some way.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
The other thing that is really confusing me is the seventh sister because it has like the list of characters that like breaks down who everybody is, right? And then the seventh one, Mayrope, whatever her name is, like it just says she's missing. It doesn't, and he says like I never found her. I'm like, if he
But maybe
like
that's just the seventh sister of the constellation. Maybe that's not.
no, because it has like their nicknames and what their constellation name would have been, and then it has the last sister and she's missing. But like, I don't know, is she considered missing if he never adopted her? Like, so then that like would mean that all of these girls. So if your theory was right, where Pascal is somehow related to to
Laurent
Laurent,
or like the little boy.
right? If he somehow has a connection to him and that's why he adopted Maya, then you would think that he also has a connection to these other girls and like their parents. You would think would like be how the story continues. And so then
Maybe.
there's
All
like
the girls are related to Laurent. Laurent met the little boy.
Laurent got around. He got around, guys.
Laurent was really bad at
He was
those
just
protective measures
planting his seed all over the place.
all over the world. Because these girls are from all parts of the world.
So
I mean,
Passant has Laurent's family tree.
he did become like a famous sculptor. So I don't know. Maybe he traveled.
Maya was just the first.
She thought she was special. She was not special.
I just think the book should be called something else, and the whole series should just be The Seven Sisters. I think calling the book The Seven Sisters is very misleading.
Yeah, or it could be like the Seven Sisters and then have like a subtitle, like a
Right. Like the other ones have different names.
because obviously she planned on writing a whole series, right? Like this is the whole book
Right.
is set up as a series book.
Right. Because you get to know all about the family. There was so much information about the family in the first little section, about the Maya section.
Maybe it was
That I was
written like after. Maybe she started writing the book as like Maya and Isabella, and then she was like, "Oh, this would be interesting," and so she like put it in after. I wonder. I don't know.
I don't know, but there was things I was reading way too deep into the first section,
As you
and
do.
I was like, how is this going to come back at the end? How is this? And I was like, I feel like
It's
none of
not.
this information is going to pertain. At one point, I was literally like,
This
I
feels
don't
like a
think any of
trend
this.
with you, Jill.
But
It feels like a trend. You just
I
have
read
to
too
like,
deep.
yeah,
I
like
want everything to be significant.
you don't read for like pleasure. You read for like information.
I'm like, well, okay, maybe that goes back to me liking thrillers because so often when you read a thriller, at the end they wrap it all up and they're like, oh, this little Easter egg that I gave you back in chapter 1, you were supposed to remember that and think about it when 10 chapters later I mentioned this and that was supposed to help you solve the murder. And so whenever I read a book and there's like things that are like weird, like, okay, so I was like, why is this man adopting all of these women, all these little girls? And then she even asks that, like, after he's dead, and she's like, why? Like, she even like alludes to, like, was that weird that dad was adopting all of us? And then what was the other thing that I thought about? It was something with the sisters that oh, it was the two sisters that are like
attached to
super
the hip.
reliant.
Star and Cece.
Yeah,
They're
and like
super
how
codependent.
they're super codependent, and then even the family like makes comments about like, hey, I'm kind of worried about, I think it's Star.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yes, I'm glad somebody else is thinking like the same thing. And I thought like, how is this gonna come in later? But then they just kind of like completely forget about all the other sisters until Allie shows up at the end. And I'm assuming Allie is the one that the next book
The
is
next
about.
book.
But yeah, I was reading way too deep in that first little section.
Another reason that makes me think that Passant is like connected to this little boy is that like the music that she had turned on, that Allie had turned on when she went into his office. Yeah, that was the music that the little boy was playing on his violin when Laurent found him. Like in the alley or whatever. He was like, what is that music? And he like went searching for the music and the little boy was playing his violin.
Yeah.
It was the same song.
Yeah.
I just want to Google it because
Proud.
I know. I don't actually want to read the rest of the books. I just want to know.
I kind of want to read the rest of the book, but there's just so many other books that I want to read that
I'm not gonna lie. I'm like a mood reader. Like 100% I'm a mood reader. Like I don't ever plan to read books that I read. I just kind of like stumble on them and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good book. And so then I like read it.
Yeah. I tried really hard to read What the Library Hides while I was listening to it on audio, and I couldn't get into it. I never finished the series that we start.
Wait,
What is
what the
what the
library?
library? Second. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what the
I
river
understand that.
knows and what the
Oh,
library hides.
Yeah.
okay.
I
I'm a
couldn't.
mood reader, but I collect books, and so I have various TBRs, and I just like mood read out of those piles. So.
So I wrapped all of my books that were on my TBR as of December 1st or December 31st, and I completely forgot what books I have. So now every time I get to unwrap one, it's like I bought a new book,
It's like Christmas.
and then I'm very excited to read it.
See, I would wrap my books and then I would completely forget about them because
I
they're
put,
wrapped.
I mean, they're right here on the top of my bookshelf, but I don't know what they are. So I just, grab one off, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a new book. So
I think if I did that, I would unwrap something and be like, not feeling that one. And then I'd grab the next
Yeah.
one and be like,
Yeah. Or I would never unwrap
no,
them because I didn't know what they were. And I actually took the effort to wrap this book. And so now I'm going to unwrap it and then just decide not to read it. Like, yeah.
it makes me so excited.
I'm glad you
it
found
works
something.
for you.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I will even
All right.
add things to my Kindle library and just never read them. And then I go to add a new
Yes.
book and it's like, you must delete one of these books. And I'm like, oops. Okay. So that's my life.
All right. Well, what
Talking
did?
about very blurry.
Yes, yes. What do we think about
Oh.
this book?
Well, it's because of my camera. Hold on.
There you
There
go.
it goes.
Okay. Are we sharing our rating or are we
Yeah.
just
What do we rate this
okay?
book?
I gave it a 3 because I did enjoy Isabella's story and I enjoyed Maya's time in Rio, but the beginning of the book I was just like struggling to get through. I did not care about her family or what was going on with her dad, and like all of that could just go away and I would like the book
Yeah.
a lot better.
Yeah. I think the only part that the first little section, the purpose of it is to set up the whole series, and you're not
But I don't care
invested.
about the whole
Right.
series.
Nobody's invested in the whole series in the first chapter.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of information for people for something that you don't care about anymore. Yet, not anymore, but you don't care about it yet.
I mean, I think it kind
was
of got
once
more exciting once Maya went to Brazil. Like, then
Yeah, I
it
was gonna
kind of
say
started.
once Zed called, things like I got more interested in the story and it was easier for me to listen to. I was listening to it most of the time. But the beginning I was just like, oh man, I gotta get through this.
Yeah, it's not
So I
until
gave it a
chapter
3.
13 that is when Isabella shows up, when the actual story starts, because that's the actual story, let's be real. So, anyways. I'd probably also do a 3. So I definitely would if somebody I don't even know how somebody would ask me to recommend this book unless they were specifically hey, have you read this book? Would you read it again? Or would you recommend that I wouldn't read it again? But mostly because I feel like it's one of those books you just can't read again.
Yeah.
But so I would say it's a good book. It's not a bad book. But I wouldn't even know how to recommend it to somebody.
Well, if somebody was looking for historical fiction, we've actually read quite a few historical fictions. So,
And this is not one that I would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably recommend The Women or even The Briar Club, probably,
yeah.
before I recommended this book. So it was a good book. It was not a bad book. It feels ambiguous to me. I don't know where to put it.
Stand out.
I don't know where to put it. Thank you. Yes, that's probably good. The end. What do you think, Jill?
I never remember what the things are.
3 is decent. It's okay. Nothing too exciting or awful. It has its moments, but it isn't going to blow you away. 2.5 is meh, not terrible, but not great either. It has some issues and might be a bit of a chore to get through. 3.5 would be pretty good. It's a solid read with some good parts, but it has its flaws. Still, you'll probably enjoy it.
I
Would
would
you
say
like
it's
any other?
I would say it's 3.5. I think it's a pretty solid read. I think once you
Solid.
get past I think once you get past the first little bit, it's pretty good. So
True that. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on. Stop. Okay. It's 6:00.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
What are we reading next month, Miranda?
Next month, we're reading a book that was recommended to me by Alyssa from Stories and Spoilers podcast. It's called The Rainfall Market by Yu Young Guang. And it's this doesn't say it, but it's a Korean bestseller, and then it was translated into English and published earlier this year. It has a really cute cover, and it's shorter.
what is it
So
called?
The Rainfall Market.
Oh, okay.
I thought that a shorter book might be nice because we've been reading a lot of thick books lately. I'm also sick. Okay. So it says, if you could swap your life for a better one, which would you choose? On the outskirts of Rainbow Town, there is an old abandoned house. They say that if you send a letter detailing your misfortunes there, you could receive a ticket. If you bring this ticket to the house on the first day of the rainy season, you'll be granted entrance into the mysterious rainfall market, where you can choose to completely change your life. No one is more surprised than, I think it's Saren, when she receives a ticket. Lonely and with no real prospects for a future, Saren ventures into to the market, determined to create a better life for herself. There, she meets a magical cat companion named Isha, and they search through bookstores, perfumeries, and fantastical realms, while Saren tries to determine what her perfect life will look like. The catch? Saren has only 1 week to find happiness, or she'll be doomed to vanish into the market forever. And all the while, a shadow follows quietly behind them.
Ooh.
That's it.
Another mystery. Who is the shadow?
So
Jill's gonna make this way more complicated than it is.
it's gonna be like, the cat was doing this, and then they bought this item, and that all links back to.
Okay, that reminds me of like when Mom first started like reading these vampire series, and she would like literally write out in a journal like who was related to who and how they're connected, and like she would reread each of the books before the new book came out so that she was like caught up. Not that I think that you would do that. I don't know, would you do that?
No, I don't reread
But-
books.
But yeah, she had like this whole like detailed list. I could see Jill like writing down information about her mystery novels, like, ooh, this seems important. And she like write it down.
I have my handy dandy notebook.
String going.
She makes a murder board, like
For all my murder mysteries. I just have my
Yeah.
handy dandy notebook where I keep all my detective notes.
Okay, stop. I'm just imagining Jill reading literally any book, showing up to podcast book club with her murder board, and just like explaining to us, like.
No, I don't got time for that.
You should start reading things like Fourth Wing and any Sarah J. Maas
Oh
book,
my
so you can
God.
start connecting everything, and you can start doing all the theories.
So you could have a journal.
No, I did read the first 2 books of Akatar.
I think you would like Throne of Glass better, but
That one is wrapped up right now. I have to find it.
you should go find that.
I have no idea what.
Pick out a thick book.
No, it's kind of
The
thin.
first one's the first one's kind of thin.
Oh, well then pick a thin book. Is it a hardcover or a paperback.
They're all paperbacks. No, not all of them, but most of them.
Anyways, that's what
Alright.
we're reading next month.
Yay!
We're going to Korea.
Korea.
Okay.
Alrighty.
That it?
Bye.
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 What's our millennial bye?
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe and then follow us on whatever social media platform you use the most. The link for next month's book is going to be down in the description below, so grab your copy and then make sure to share all your thoughts with us.